all of these automated approaches are coming up. You very easily could do an analysis of your site and figure out where you weren't placing for certain keywords or certain queries in LLMs and get a bunch of AI-driven content written. But ultimately, we find that that's starting to get oversaturated and not really all that helpful. What's really helpful at the end of the day is answering the questions that your customers have in an authentic way.
Welcome to the Marketing Expedition Podcast, an auditory journey through the latest in marketing, branding, and advertising. Now, here's your Marketing Expedition guide, Ray Allen.
On this episode of the Marketing Expedition Podcast, I get to speak with Andy Janaitis, and he is the founder and chief strategist of PPC Pitbulls, a boutique digital marketing agency that helps small businesses grow past 7 figures using Google and Meta ads. He partners with founder-led brands and e-commerce teams to simplify their paid ad strategies, ensuring campaigns are built on solid tracking, clean execution, and profitability, not noise or guesswork. With over 10 years of agency and analytics experience, Andy's background spans from engineering, web development, and digital strategy. He is known for his practical, down-to-earth approach that cuts through marketing overwhelm and empowers business owners to take confident action. Whether he's helping a brand understand attribution or demystify performance max, Andy brings clarity, integrity, and deep respect for the entrepreneurial journey. And we are going to talk a lot about a number of things, really, all things digital and advertising and tactics and things about being GA4 and just getting an ROI on all the ads and all the things. But first, it is time now for my Marketing Essentials moment, the basics that you need to help you continue to build your brand and your bottom line. The topic I wanted to cover today is proof is a marketing asset, not a nice to have. So proof isn't optional. Proof is that asset that we need. And if your marketing isn't converting the way you want, maybe there's some things we can tweak, but it's often not because your offer is just bad. It's because people just don't feel certain yet. So here's the thing. If your prospects are always asking themselves these questions like, can you help someone like me? Will this work for my situation? What is the risk if I say yes? Proof answers all three faster than any slogan or anything that you're doing well, right? So a testimonial that can say things like, they were great to work with, but it's not strong enough proof. Strong proof is very specific, and it can sound like, we increased qualified leads by 30% in 60 days, for example, or our event attendance doubled compared to last year, or we finally have a consistent content system and we're saving 5 hours a week. So there's something specific and measurable, and those types of things that can have testimonials or whatever it is, whatever industry you're in, the proof of what's happening is going to help sell your prospects even better than what you could, because now it's coming from your loyal clients who have wonderful things to say. So there's 3 types of proof that you need to be collecting from your clients and using it everywhere you can. So you can use your proof on your website, on your proposals, your social media, and even in your email signature. And the number one proof is the outcome. What changed after having worked with you? And these numbers, when we can use statistics or numbers or percentages, or if we can use revenue or the number of leads or traffic or retention or any of those types of things, if you can use numbers that are going to be a clear before and after, the prospect has worked with you, and depending on what industry you're in, right? And then the process proof. So people don't just want to buy the results, they want to buy the confidence. You can show them how you work and what steps you've taken and what checkpoints you've had, and then having your loyal clients talk about that so that your prospects can understand that process that you took them through in order to get that process proof. So we've got outcome proof, we've got process proof, and then just a simple statement of here's our process really can help remove a ton of anxiety, help people feel like they can trust the process, And then number 3 is identity proof. This is where someone like me, someone that's relevant, just like me, proof. So same industry or similar industry, maybe similar size or geography, maybe some similar constraints. And when a prospect sees themselves in the story, trust goes up because now it's relevant to them and they're going to think, oh, well, if they can do it, so can I, and then have that relevancy. So proof on the outcome, proof on the process, and identity proof can go a long ways. And here's your action step of what you can do. Collect at least one piece of proof this week. You can send a quick message to a client and ask them these questions. What was going on before we worked together? Number 2, what's better now? And please try to be as specific as you can. And then number 3, what would you tell someone who's on the fence about hiring us? Why would they hire you, right? And that's it. Proof isn't just a vanity metric, it's a conversion tool. And you can build your proof library like you've built any other business asset because it pays you back every time you take your proof and showcase what you can do to others that you've already done it for, and tell these in stories. And then remember to do a primary offer or call to action or something that's going to get them to the prospect that will get them to be able to call on you or follow up with you or whatever the case might be, right? The CTA, the call to action. Don't forget to have a call to action because they want to relate with the people that you are having showcase the proof of performance. Okay? All right, with that, let's get into our interview. Welcome to the Marketing Expedition podcast. I'm your host, Ray Allen. I'm the president and CEO of Peppershock Media and the founder of the Marketing Expedition community. And today's guest, we have Andy with us. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Thanks for having me, Ray.
So let's just share a little more about you and what got you into PPC Pitbulls and some things that you do. But first of all, let's just kind of back up and tell us the journey that got you to where you are now.
Awesome. Yeah. So I have a little bit of an unconventional path into marketing. I went to school as an industrial engineer and kind of came out into the workforce as a consultant in kind of industrial engineering space, not digital marketing, I should say data science and modeling and simulation. And over time, I kind of moved through that and found my way into software development, needing different software tools to build a lot of the models that we were looking at. And then from there, I kind of migrated out of the government space where I had been working into a true digital agency, which I really kind of found like I found my calling there, kind of working with small to medium businesses on, whether it be web presence or mobile apps or on the marketing side, how we build up a business and how we get the message out there, how we show up online essentially. So I did that for a number of years, more on the software development side. I was on a team building mobile apps. I was kind of on the product management side there. And what I found over time in interacting with a lot of the marketing folks was on the marketing side, there wasn't a ton of rigor. So it was a lot of throwing a bunch of tactics at the wall and kind of just hoping for the best. The measurement wasn't the best. And even some of the technical tools that could be used, whether it's Google Ads or Meta Ads, just weren't being implemented really for lack of understanding of the technical side and kind of how to get some of the data signals set up and how to analyze the data that was coming in. But a lot of guessing on that side. So I always like to kind of say that, I started to bring an engineering mindset to marketing. So over the years, I decided that I wanted to go out and start my own firm and really help small to medium businesses. And that's who we serve in PPC Pitbulls, and really focus on not only, marketing, kind of the traditional tactics that we talk about, but really applying engineering and systems thinking mindset over the top of it to make sure that we're, not only trying out a bunch of tactics, trying out a bunch of different creative, but also, measuring and really understanding what problem we're trying to solve and having a systematic way to get there.
Yeah, so maybe give me some examples of some things that you've done for some of your clients that kind of showcase a process that you went through.
Definitely, yeah. So one of the things I always like to say is, before we get started, it's always about figuring out the goal. And typically, the goal isn't necessarily the goal that you think about going in. And what I mean by that, so for example, we worked with an agency where we're looking to drive more leads for them. So of course, the first thing was, hey, we just want to get more leads coming in the door. And what we found over time, we're running Google ads for them, was that not all leads were created the same. So first of all, you have the standard problems that some of the businesses that were filling out contact forms on their site just weren't qualified. So in terms of Google ads, it would seem like, hey, great, we got 3 leads today. But when they tried to follow up on some of those leads, ultimately they weren't good leads and weren't valuable enough. So it doesn't really matter that, hey, you're getting good, cheap leads in if they're not valuable and they're not going to ultimately close and become customers. So what we started to do, so that's kind of the first problem, and a big thing you can do there is passing back some of that offline data to see who really does close at the end of the day, getting some of that data out of the CRM, passing that back into Google Ads. So a really kind of technical setup to take that offline data and make sure your campaigns are optimizing for people who actually become customers. But then you can take it one step further and say, hey, as a business, they were at the time trying to pivot into more the AI space, looking at conversational bots and things like that. So they were getting a lot of leads and good leads that, over time we had passed back some of that data. So they were kind of, more qualified leads, but they're all in the mobile app space. So, it wasn't particularly helpful for them necessarily. While it might be profitable leads, it might even be really good qualified people that they could work with. That wasn't the direction they were trying to pivot their business. So I like to use that example just to kind of show that, first on the technical side, but then even just on kind of the business strategy side, there's a lot of things that don't always get spoken, especially in some of these kind of agency relationships where you're hiring somebody to manage your ads. But there's always an extra step deeper that we can dive, and the goal isn't always the goal. So I think that's the first step, is to get really, really clear before you start running your ads is what are we trying to get done here? Let's establish a goal up front and then work towards it. Whereas oftentimes I think a lot of people go the opposite direction and say, hey, I'm going to try this tactic, or I'm going to try these ads, and just throw it against the wall and see what sticks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. I think that is definitely something that people need to kind of take a step back and ultimately kind of think with the end in mind and what the goal could truly be and the outcomes that you're looking for. Do you have like a specific client that comes to mind when I say, okay, here's the process that we went through, here's what we thought our goal could be, maybe some of the tactics you took to reach the goal, and like give some insights on, things that maybe people could consider if they haven't necessarily gone through the process before?
Yeah. So one great kind of example or something that we were really proud of, we were working with, it was actually like a health and wellness type business. They did bookings. They did business appointments for folks, and you could book appointments on the website. So as we began working with them, we were looking at how can we optimize to get more of those forms booked on the site, more people booked to come in and have appointments with the business. And that was a stated goal. They were, another agency had been working with them previously. They were running meta ads, and they were, kind of seeing, what the cost per booking was essentially. And that was how we were measuring ourselves. So first, we came in understanding that as the goal, and started to look at how can we optimize here? How can we, change the creative? How can we tweak how we're measuring conversions so that a little bit cleaner signal data is passed back to Meta? And all of those changes worked and helped to start to drive down that cost per booking. But over time, as we started to talk to them and get to know them, we found that oftentimes they were talking about people who are coming in the front door and booking without ever having gone through the website, or maybe they would go to the website, but then ultimately wanted to just kind of show up and book in person. So what we realized was this was great. We were optimizing for leads through online bookings, but at the end of the day, that was only a small portion of the customer base that they were bringing in, and truly there was a lot that could be done outside of that with kind of in-person and offline bookings. So we started working on how to get that data in as well, and then to run local ads on Google to ultimately bring people in the front door and start to optimize for that. So it's that kind of step that, their first thought was, hey, we're already running ads. We've just got to optimize this. Let's drive down our cost per lead. But at the end of the day, really there was an extra question or something different to be asked there that, hey, is that lead really the right lead to be driving? Maybe there's something else we should be trying altogether. And that ultimately proved to be really profitable for them.
So do you think that by having these results shared has helped you gain additional clients? Do you do like case studies or, things to kind of showcase the work that you've done to help you in your marketing journey?
Yeah.
And more? Tell me about that.
It's always a great question. And anytime we ask about our own internal marketing, I don't know if you feel the same way. It's always like a cobbler's shoes problem, right? Right. And we do document some of these things as case studies. And, as we do more outreach and try to tell our own story, we find that's a really big part of what we do. Oftentimes, we don't spend as much time as we should kind of documenting our own wins and getting it out there. But yeah, we have found that to be pretty powerful is just trying to get stories about the people we've served and how we've helped them. And what I find, and you've probably already gathered, I kind of come at this from a pretty technical perspective. So when thinking about case studies, my first instinct is to kind of go through, very specifically, like what was the really technical setup that we put in place to solve, how do we solve that problem and how do we drive change? And oftentimes with new clients, it kind of goes right over people's head, or that's not the problem they're worried about. People don't come to us saying, hey, my Google Ads data signal is messed up. They say, hey, I'm spending money and I'm not seeing results from it. So a big thing that we've focused on, and I'm trying to get better and better on from a case studies perspective, is making sure to kind of map those things to, the transformation of the client, not just, kind of what we did, even if it's really good technical work, specifically, what did that mean for the client and what were the business outcomes?
Yeah. Do you have a process that you try to follow to do your own, marketing for your, I know, like you said, it's like the cobbler's shoe, or, I guess the shoemaker's daughter or son has no kind of thing. But I'm just curious to learn if you have kind of like a way to follow to help you make sure that sometimes some of these things get out there for your own marketing journey.
Yeah, it's a great question. To be entirely honest, I would say it's an unsolved problem for us, or it's a problem that we'll constantly be learning and growing in. Yeah. But yeah, we try a lot of different approaches in this day and age, especially for the business that we're in, where it is a lot of strategy and teaching. It's a lot of thought leadership. So we do a lot of things like trying to get on podcasts, like we're on here today, and speaking to people about the work we do. We do some of our own ads, running paid ads. Those can be better or worse sometimes for agencies, depending on the value of the leads you get in. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, what we find is as we move forward, especially with AI, everything is getting more and more technical. Everybody wants to, do things at scale and implement these solutions that, really work well at scale, I guess would be the best way to put it. But at the end of the day, the things that are most effective are things that actually kind of go back to some of the old school ways that we would do, the real relationship building. So a lot of the tactics are, as much as it's tough to say from a systematic perspective, and it's not a very satisfying answer to give other agency owners, but you've just got to get out there and shake hands and meet other people and, kind of let the serendipity of different relationships evolve and see, where those relationships go.
Yeah, I think it's always a battle to work on client work versus your own.
That's
For
true.
sure.
That's the other big piece, right? Is just getting the time. You always tend to focus on the clients and neglect your own work.
Well, let's dig into some of the tactics that people can take in consideration. I mean, there's, a number of different ways to go about, if it's form fills, if it's, how you're leading people to a particular website, it's the copy you use, it's all of the different factors to consider. I guess I want to maybe just pick your brain a little bit about, some of the things that you see that maybe when people are wanting to put together a campaign, what are some kind of, I don't know, maybe some new things to think about that maybe are different than even just like a year ago, that we keep seeing new ways of doing things? Can you dig into a
Yeah.
little bit of that?
Yeah. So there's a ton to dig into there. I think kind of one good jumping off point that you brought up there is kind of how things have been different recently, and I think everybody would agree over the last year or so. The biggest difference is kind of this AI revolution and how are different AI driven approaches changing what we do. I think a big thing from our perspective, and this again is kind of that getting back to old school thinking. There's a lot of new approaches you could be using, but I'm thinking of AI and discoverability in AI in terms of, how does your website stand out among other websites, competitors, and really just the whole space. What we would typically have thought of as SEO back in the day. And that's totally changing now with some of the different, we'd say AEO or kind of AI driven optimization. I think the biggest thing to remember though is that while all of these automated approaches are coming up, you very easily could do an analysis of your site and figure out where you weren't placing for certain keywords or certain queries in LLMs and get a bunch of AI driven content written. But ultimately, we find that that's starting to get oversaturated and not really all that helpful. What's really helpful at the end of the day is answering the questions that your customers have in an authentic way. So, think of it from like the in an old sales conversation, it would be you're sitting there with a prospect and, we talk about, kind of knocking down each one of their objections and making sure that you have a good answer to get past each individual objection. And when we're looking at doing that via website, that's kind of it's the same thing, really. It's making sure that you understand for your ideal client, what are the few things that they're gonna say, hey, is it price? Is it this is too complex for me to implement with my current system? Is it, I've already tried other agencies or other systems and nothing's ever worked before, and making sure you kind of explain why you're different and differentiated and have an answer for each one of those. And now in this AI world, we're thinking structured data and kind of different ways to do it. But at the end of the day, it's really just having that personal conversation. That's why I love, video content on websites and basically just having a conversation with a client, via digital means to get those pieces of information in. And what we find is that's helping the conversion on the site. But more than that, that's helping whether you're looking at Google with SEO or you're looking, with AEO at some of these LLMs. If you can do that well in a way that would actually work for a real human, it's also going to work for these underlying algorithms to find you. And in fact, it actually, that's all kind of how you get found organically. It actually supports paid as well, that your paid ads are going to do a lot better as well if you can, authentically answer customer questions in a good way.
Right. Yeah, I think that there's just a number of things to consider and testing and actually now, it's gotten so much better with being able to do even just simple A/B testing and trying out the different, factors and filters. Is that something you guys do a lot of? Is just testing the messaging, testing the imagery, testing the platforms? Tell me a little bit about your process in regards to testing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's obviously really important. We focus really primarily on paid ads, and then, to your question of like A/B testing on site. We'll do some CRO work kind of as it pertains to getting better results out of your paid ads. So what we find, there's a few different kind of stages of what you can be testing there. First, from the on-site experience. So it's, kind of conversion rate optimization. Can we, change this headline here? Can we move this button here? Move this CTA further up on the page, kind of thing. And those, at scale, I mean, it can be really valuable to test those and have a good list of experiments for yourself and for your team to run through. But a lot of times people get caught up in that, I think. And we always have the example of like changing button colors. People think like, oh, should this be blue or orange, kind of thing, and run an A/B test on that. And especially at small to medium sized businesses where you only have X amount of sessions coming into the page, it's important that a lot of the stuff that we would like to do from a really data-driven perspective, we have to do some of these things by rule of thumb because there simply isn't enough data to make statistically significant decisions. If once you start really breaking down all the different facets. So what's important is finding the most impactful things first. So for instance, you mentioned your messaging. If we can get to what is the core offer, what is the core thing that you're doing for a customer, and what makes you different from competitors, testing those messages and just 2 or 3 of them maybe to kind of help figure out what are the top level buckets, that's going to help a lot to say, hey, are we really talking about price? Are we really talking about, a particular geographic area we can serve? Are we really talking about a particular way that we offer our service? Which one of those resonates most with the customers? Those types of tests are going to have a really big impact because that's you showing up and really just telling your story and authentically telling, how it is that you're doing better service for your customers. The types of things that are, hey, we're going to just kind of on this headline change the language a little bit, or, what if we use this term instead of this term? Oftentimes, I think those kind of get oversold. We hear about, hey, you got to A/B test everything and experiment with everything. And certainly with massive businesses, that makes a lot of sense. But a lot of times these days, you have these smaller businesses that say, hey, I've got a tool available to me now that I can, within a day set up one of these tests so that as people come to my page, they're all going to see slightly different headlines. But what they don't think through is like, at the end of the day, you just don't have enough people to test with, or you just don't have enough data there that it's going to be more of a red herring than anything. It's going to waste even though you could probably get that test implemented and set up, more often than not, with those kind of small tweaks, we find that it's not worth the time.
Right. Well, and I think there's something to be said. If it's something working, then keep going.
always another big thing there too. And what's nice too is on the creative side, so more from like a paid ads perspective, again, whether you're in Meta or in Google, there are setups where you can run an entire kind of hypothesis-driven test. But just as easily, you can take an extra piece of creative and just toss it in the campaign and see if it gets service or not. Again, not the most scientific way to do it, but that's Google or Meta telling you, hey, we think this piece of creative is a winner or not, and aligns with our algorithm better or not. So those types of kind of quick and dirty tests, I think, work really well for smaller budgets and smaller businesses.
Speaking of those smaller budgets and businesses, what would you recommend that if, somebody's trying to think about how much they could spend in their budget? I mean, and obviously it's kind of hard and it's always based on industry, but do you think that there's at least something that like a minimum spend, or, give people an idea of like, a couple $100s is probably not going to make a huge impact, but do you tell your clients, like, we recommend spending at least X amount of dollars? What do you think?
Yeah, there's a few ways to think about it. And you called out in the first place there that, it's so different by industry. If you're, we have an e-com business that's selling chocolate, and their average order value is $30 a pop. Obviously, you're going to be able to get a lot more purchases, a lot more data for a much smaller budget than, an agency that their average engagement is, a $20,000 or a $40,000 project.
Right.
They're going to be paying a lot more per lead, which means you have fewer leads and less data coming back. So those are just some of the kind of like pacing decision, just starting from say average order value or average client value to kind of figure out how much you might be paying.
Right.
And the big thing you want to focus on is, depending on what you're trying to get done, you want to make sure that you have enough spend that you're getting enough data back in to make good decisions about what you're doing. So I always kind of advocate for lower budgets. Honestly, a lot of times people will come to us and say, hey, we're going to get started at 15K or 20K with this particular thing. And it's always like, well, if you don't know something's going to work, and marketing is always experimental, honestly. It's, I like this idea of kind of like a marketing adventure. It's, you never quite know what you're going to get until it gets out there and you see how it's working for your specific business. It is really important that you start small enough that it's, money that you could lose, and find profitability before you start throwing a lot of money at it. So for that reason, I always kind of pull back budgets a little bit. But when you think minimums, what you want to think is, hey, at my average order value, am I going to be able to get enough leads in at this dollar, at this spend, that I can get, say 30 to 50 leads in a given month is a big number that we use both on Meta and Google to see that, hey, we have enough data that after that spend, we can now make a decision and see, hey, should we shut this campaign down, or is it worth spinning up and kind of continuing on and trying something new? So that's going to mean something different for every business. But, I typically tell people you probably don't want to go lower than 1,500 or 2,000 for a given campaign. If you have less than that earmarked for a campaign, you're probably going to have a hard time getting enough data to make good decisions on it. And then the last thing I'll say with that too is, remember that if you're outsourcing it, if it's in-house, it's one thing, but if you're outsourcing it, you've got to think about agency fees as well. And the way that factors in sometimes is, to get good quality management, oftentimes you're not going to see that for less than, say 2 or 3K a month in management fees. So if you're paying that to somebody else, it doesn't make sense to, experiment with $1,000 budget if you're paying $2,000 or $3,000 to have it managed.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and like you were saying too, each industry, if it's automotive versus, the chocolate, maker versus, it's definitely competitive in each industry too. Like automotive is super competitive because everyone wants to sell cars, right? But if you have just a boutique specialty item that maybe not as many people do, it might not be as much to have attribution to those ads that come through. But it's wildly different for each industry, and takes time to analyze and see even what your competitors are doing or those types of things.
Want to start a podcast but don't know where to begin? At Poderific, we don't just produce podcasts, we help you create auditory experiences that will captivate your audience. Our state-of-the-art podcast recording studio, powered by Peppershock Media, is designed for creators like you. Record with high-quality equipment supported by our expert team, and distribute your podcast across major platforms like Apple and Spotify. Whether you're launching your first episode or you're a seasoned podcaster, we got you covered. Visit Poderific.com today to learn how we can help you produce, record, and share your story with the world. Your podcast deserves to be Poderific.
Andy, tell me about some of the tools that you might be able to share that people could use to help them in, maybe looking at their site, looking at their ads. Like, what kind of tools have you been using recently that have been seemingly helpful? And I mean, there's so many tools out there now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. I mean, the gold standard I always tell everybody is, if you have a website, you have to have Google Analytics or GA4 installed on the page. Just a really good tool. It's been ongoing for a very long time. They upgraded to this GA4 version a few years ago, and it got a little more complicated on how you pull some of the reports out, but honestly, it got a lot more powerful too. And it's a free tool, so there's no reason not to have it installed and collecting data. And even if you're not using it today, having that historic data is going to be really helpful if you ever decide to start to make a change or do something. So that, I would say, is like kind of almost a non-negotiable. Like you've got to have GA4 installed on the site. More recently, and what's cool is this another free tool. We've been using Microsoft Clarity quite a bit. and it's a kind of a similar, it's almost like Microsoft's answer to Google Analytics, it feels like. But what's cool about it is it gives you screen recordings and heat maps, which are typically things that used to be kind of the domain of these paid tools and could be a little bit more expensive. But what that means is, if you're running ads, or even if you're not running ads, if you have data that says, hey, 100 people have hit my site, and when you look at your bank account that none of them have made a purchase, it's not that helpful to just kind of stop at that point. What Microsoft Clarity then does is you can actually watch a recording of what each one of those people did when they were on your site. How much time did they spend? Did they, click here or scroll down this far, or hey, they all drop off before they get to this particular scroll point. And you can start to make decisions about how you design your site, how you design your messaging based on the behavior that you see when people start hitting it.
Right. I think that that's super helpful. And if people even take the time to analyze what's going on, then they can make it even better. And with the next iteration and the new ways of doing things, that's awesome. Yeah, I think if there are other tools that come to mind that would be helpful for people, I think that those are always fun to share and tell and show. Is there anything else that comes to mind?
Yeah, so in the free domain, I mean, from where we stand, the kind of work we do, we use Google Tag Manager all the time. And that is basically a tool that gives you a drag and drop interface where you can, any of these other tools we talk about, Google Analytics, Microsoft Clarity, you can install them all yourself without having to, be a coder and understand how to implement the code on any given individual page. So that's always really, really helpful. It kind of puts, from like a marketer's perspective, it puts some of those coding decisions or put some of those tools into your own hands as opposed to having to work with a development team. So we love that. And then some of the other pieces kind of depend on, what type of business you're in and what you're trying to do. We work with a lot of e-commerce companies, and on that side, your platform itself and some of the apps available are really important. So, for instance, if you're an e-commerce business selling, for instance, like a chocolate business, like we mentioned, Shopify, I think is typically best in class. We've been really, really happy working with Shopify. We've worked with a number of different platforms, but especially for smaller businesses, it's just seamless. There's not a lot of customization needed, but it is really powerful that you can do a lot of the customization yourself. So, from a platform perspective, we always like Shopify there. And then there's a number of different tools to push your data where you need to get it, push your product feeds. That's the other kind of like big e-commerce tool that we really focus on. A couple good ones. There's one by Simprosis, which is relatively cheap and doesn't have a ton of features, but it works well. And then there's another one called Data Feed Watch that does a good job there. That's all kind of on the e-commerce side. On the lead gen side, we stopped thinking about kind of that e-commerce platform, and then your big challenge on the lead gen side is CRM. So making sure you're choosing a good CRM, which is going to, not only track customer data as they interact with your business and, either fill out a contact form or just execute any behavior on your site, making sure that you have good visibility and analytics over all that behavior. But then what I think is really, really important is passing that data back into any ad platforms you're using. So how easy is it to connect your CRM with a Google Ads or a Meta Ads? And for that, there's a number of good tools out there. At kind of a higher tier, HubSpot works really well. We've worked with more enterprise clients on HubSpot, though it can be a little pricey. On a lower tier, we've really been liking GoHighLevel quite a bit, and the price point is pretty reasonable for that. So those are just some of the kind of key tools I would think about on those two sides of the house, e-commerce and lead gen.
Let's talk a little bit more about GoHighLevel. I keep hearing more and more about it, and we just actually started to use it, or like at least learn or explore using it, I should say.
Yeah.
We really haven't implemented a whole lot with it yet. I did figure out how to become A2 or AP, whatever, compliant for text messaging. But
Nice.
why is GoHighLevel to you something that is a viable, helpful, tool to use?
Yeah. So I first started interacting with GoHighLevel mainly as kind of a drag and drop funnel builder. And from that standpoint, it's great because it's really easy to set up a pretty basic, sales funnel and collect customer information or even sell a product, pretty easily. And it's drag and drop, so anybody can do it. And that's kind of, starting from a few years back. I was aware of GoHighLevel as kind of this, like funnel builder type tool, almost similar to, like a ClickFunnels, if you're aware of that as well. But then over the years, and what I've been hearing more and more about it, we've actually run into a few clients who were using it, is using it more for its kind of full featured CRM process and having that customer relationship data all put together with the funnel building on the front end as well. So you can go straight from building a landing page to collecting the customer data to, automated workflows to kick customers to certain salespeople or to, anything that you need to do in an automated fashion there. But then it also has, email capabilities, the ability to put in different automated email flows. And most recently, I just realized that it also has its own calendar booking software similar to like Calendly. So as a matter of fact, it's something that we're about to launch our own website. We're about to relaunch our website on GoHighLevel. And the reason really is it's, from a small agency perspective, we're going to knock out 3 or 4 different subscriptions by going to this one platform. And it's a little bit easier for my team to maintain. I don't have to, hire outside support to get a developer in to make any small change we want to on it.
Yeah, I think that'll be an interesting journey for us too, because we have MailChimp, we have, we use an agency tool for social media management, and and I guess GoHighLevel does have some limited social media management scheduling tools we've noticed. So there's lots of things in there.
I was
Not
going to say
that I'm endorsing GoHighLevel or anything. Maybe they should pay me for that, right?
Exactly, yeah. Become a partner.
Well, this has been very enlightening, Andy. Anything else that you'd like to, kind of last words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our audience today?
No, I think kind of ending it where we started. We talked a lot about different tools and tactics, and honestly, coming at this from the perspective of probably like somebody sitting in the chair listening to this. I've been there before, hearing about all these different things and all these different tools, and you can honestly be a little bit overwhelming. So like, how am I going to get all of this straight and figure it all out? But at the end of the day, all of this I think comes down to understanding what your most pressing problem as a business is, what specific goal you're trying to solve, and then starting from that goal as the starting point, rather than kind of working backwards and saying, hey, what tools am I going to try to implement, or what tactic am I going to try to implement, and see if it works or not. It's really like, just start from, hey, we need, we're doing a great job of serving customers right now, but we need more leads in the funnel. Or, hey, we're getting a ton of leads, but they're not qualified, and we need to be able to get them through the sales process a little bit more quickly. Or, hey, we're selling products, and, we're selling products to the first time, great, but we're not getting any customer lifetime value and retention of clients. And whatever problem it is that you kind of define as your most pressing problem and the goal that you're trying to meet with your marketing, that's going to help drive what tool or what tactic you need to look at next and thing to fix. Don't feel like you need to implement all this at once and do all these different things. Really focus in on like, hey, what's one problem I can solve where I change nothing else in my business, make this one tweak, see how things go, and then I can look at addressing the next thing. And over time, you'll build up all the different capabilities and marketing maturity. But I would say more often than not, we work with businesses where like the biggest problem is not the marketing tools they're using or the tactics they're using. It's that they're trying to do 100 different things and they really don't understand how they're even measuring success. And that's, just getting back to that simple goal, I think helps a lot.
Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate all of the wonderful nuggets that you had to share today, Andy. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. And if people would like to reach out to you and see what you can do for them, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me there. We do put out some content and tips and tricks. And then the best way is to come out to ppcpitbulls.com. And there you can actually book a free strategy call with me. More than happy to spend a half an hour kind of digging into your business and kind of what your most pressing marketing problems are, and kind of helping you find some of that clarity, getting to what is the most important tactic or tool we should be using next, and what's the best path to get us to those goals.
Yeah. Okay, one more question for you, Andy. Why the name PC Pitbulls?
Yeah, so we have a pit bull here. She's our little mascot. Usually, if on video with these, actually, she's not in my office at the moment, but yeah, she's our little 12-year-old rescue pit bull running around here. So we started the business. We're brainstorming a bunch of different names, and we got our start specifically in Google Ads, or PPC is pay per click. So PPC Pitbulls was a really fitting name for us.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Andy, for sharing all that you did today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yes, it's been a blast.
And for those of you listening, the best thing that you can do for Andy and I is share this with others that you know that might need to hear what he had to say today. And of course, leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform, or give us a gold star review. And until next time, everybody, enjoy your marketing journey.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Expedition podcast. Want to continue the journey? Don't miss out on new episodes. Subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. Wouldn't it be great if there was one place you can go to get all the latest information and tips about marketing and advertising? The Marketing Expedition community is that place. People like you gather in our online community to build relationships with others and find the latest marketing trends, tactics, tools, and technology. We help you build your brand and your bottom line. Start your adventure today. Visit themarketingexpedition.com to find out more.